Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. I am truly honored to have with us former Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman, who is really probably the person who has had the most experience in negotiating nuclear deals, having dealt with both North Korea and Iran. Welcome, Wendy. It's great to see you.
Good to be with you, Jen.
Give us a sense of perspective about how we got here. When Donald Trump ripped up the JCPOA, where was Iran in terms of their nuclear development? And where, to the best of your knowledge, understanding you don't have any kind of confidential secret information, do we think they are right now?
So, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, better known as the Iran nuclear, maybe anti-nuclear deal that President Obama led with first Secretary Clinton and Secretary Kerry, and with my leading our negotiating team, we only allowed Iran to enrich up to 3.67% and to keep a very small stockpile of that enriched uranium. Now, Iran has enriched at least to 60%, and they need 90% for enough material for a nuclear weapon. And it's much harder to get from 3.67 to 60% than it is to get from 60% to 90%. They also have an enormous stockpile of enriched uranium. So we are in a very different place. And one thing I think is really important for your listeners and viewers to understand is President Obama is the one who created this massive ordnance penetrator that's being talked about to go to the underground site called Fordo. He commissioned the MOP, he deployed the MOP and tested the MOP because he wanted Iran to know that if they did not negotiate to get to some place where there would be intensive monitoring and verification of a very small civil nuclear program, the United States did have a military option. So Obama understood how to use coercive diplomacy to get a job done.
And the GCPA also provided, as you said, for people on the ground. And there was argument about whether there was enough, there could be better, all of the rules and regulations, but there were people on the ground to observe. What happened when the JCPOA went away?
You're quite right, Jen. The International Atomic Energy Agency had the most extreme monitoring and verification. They had people on the ground, they had electronic monitoring. They also had something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, and that is if anybody's intelligence created a suspect site, then the IAEA had a process that had been agreed to, whereby at the end of the day, they had a right to inspect that site, even if Iran didn't want them to. So there was really an amazing process in place. Over the years, a lot of that has gone away. And Rafael Grossi, now the head of the IAEA, has said that the IAEA can no longer verify exactly what's going on in Iran.
Now, for as long as I remember, we had been told publicly that since 2003, since the Iraq War, Iran had ceased to have a program to weaponize its nuclear stockpile, that is, to create a bomb that it could then at some point deliver. Again, according to public knowledge, has that changed at all? The Prime Minister of Israel seemed to indicate that there was now some secret or new information. Do you know what that could be? And judging from the outside, could Israel know about that and the United States not know about that?
We share intelligence all of the time with Israel and Israel with us. I suppose something is conceivable, but most people assess, and certainly I don't have access to intelligence anymore, but most people assess that that assessment way made way back then still is where we are. there are three steps. Getting enough fissile material, which is either highly enriched uranium or weapons-grade plutonium, for a nuclear weapon. That's the first piece. The second piece is to weaponize it, turn it into a bomb. And the third piece is to marry it with a delivery system that can deliver that bomb. Ostensibly, the Supreme Leader has not yet made the decision to go for a nuclear weapon, that all of those pieces have not been put together. Now, some of this can be done on a computer in a room, and we might not know. But nonetheless, it has always been assessed by the US and Israel that there's still some ways to go before Iran, should it decide to go for a nuclear weapon, could have one. So if Israel has new information, I assume that information has been shared with the United States, and the United States would have to validate that information because no one has the exact information. What all intelligence services do is put together bits and pieces of information to build a picture of what they believe is going on. And I have no idea whether there's something new here, but I sort of doubt it.
For decades, Israel has said to the United States, we will defend ourselves. Just give us the weaponry, help us maintain our technological edge. American men and women do not have to give their lives to help defend Israel. Now, at least according to public reporting, they have a very different message, which is they need us, they want us to engage in an ongoing war by deploying this bunker buster missile that President Obama developed. That seems to me to be a dramatic change in the way we have approached Israel, the way we've approached the Middle East, with enormous consequences down the road for the United States should we engage in yet another Middle East war.
The United States and the United States Congress has always helped Israel maintain its qualitative military edge. That QME concept is absolutely critical, both on offensive and defensive means. So we have sold and given them weapons that help them to have that edge. We obviously have given them and helped them build defensive systems, air defense systems, Iron Dome, David's Arrow, David's Sling, the Arrow, all kinds of systems. And we have helped them, as have some of the other countries in the region, to absorb these incoming missiles and shoot them down. So we have been there already in our efforts to help Israel defend itself. What we have not done, and what is before President Trump right now, is to take an offensive role, to in fact use the massive ordnance penetrator, the MOP, the bunker buster, at Fordo, and even perhaps to help launch missiles towards Tehran, towards Iran. That is a huge decision because if President Trump decides to do that, no one can reliably say what all the first, second, third order effects will be. Will Iran close the Strait of Hormuz, which is critical to the world's economy? Will Iran unleash its proxies and terrorists to harm American troops or American citizens? Will they target American leaders in an effort to square the deal from their perspective? We don't know the answers to this. We don't know whether Russia and North Korea and China will help Iran to take on the Americans. So nobody knows exactly what will happen as a result of our engagement. And so no one should underestimate how difficult and, in my view, how profound this decision will be by President Trump.
Now, let's suppose that the United States does deploy this weapon and it does hit Fordo and it is disabled in some fashion. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, could we be back in exactly the same position? Iran could theoretically rebuild even that, could it not?
Absolutely. You can't bomb away knowledge. Iran knows how to do the entire fuel cycle here. They're quite capable, and they will reconstitute their program, and they will likely do it underground and in secret. So it may take them time, but I believe they will move forward. The United States does not believe that countries have a right to enrich uranium under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. But that view is not held by a lot of countries, including some of our European allies, who believe countries do have such a right. So Iran is going to, I believe, move forward once again, and Israel will be back in the position of having, as they say, to mow the lawn again.
At times, the Prime Minister of Israel has spoken as if what he really wants is, quote, regime change. Um, Decapitating the regime, getting some better government of Iran that wouldn't rebuild. This seems to me almost fantastical. We did try this in a country that didn't have a sophisticated military, didn't have large stores of nuclear material lying around. How could we possibly control what would happen if the regime collapsed? Do we have any ability to influence events there?
Of course, regime change is something we would all look forward to if it was the right kind of regime change, because the people of Iran are oppressed and they are harmed every day in multiple ways. It's not, it's a theocracy, and although I have great respect for the Muslim religion, this is really an oppressive dictatorship in many ways. So, of course, we all wish for the Iranian people there was a difference, but we know that after the shock and awe of a military strike, moving forward is much more difficult. You don't even have to look at Iraq, which is what is often discussed. Look at all of our hopes after Tahrir Square, when the people in Egypt rose up and we thought, oh my gosh, there's going to be an Arab Spring, there's going to be enormous change. And yet that has not occurred in the ways many people had hoped for, because it's hard. It's really hard. And it's about the people themselves in a country and what they want for their future. In Syria, yes, Assad is gone. We are hopeful for what has come now, but none of us know whether the change can be sustained and what kind of change it will ultimately be. So, yes, we all have this fantasy. We all have this wish and this hope, but it's really up to the people in the country, not to an outside invader or an outside force.
I would also add that one of the ways we might even help bring this about is soft power and communication, like the Voice of America, which this president is in the midst of undoing. Let me ask a very kind of methodical, almost technical question. If you were going to do this, if you were going to take this enormous leap, what are the kinds of steps you would want to take in advance of this with our allies, with Congress, with our forces in the region, with Americans who, by the way, have really not been helped in Israel, as I spoke about with Ned Price, the former spokesperson for the State Department. The State Department has been nowhere to be found in Israel. What are the kinds of steps you would have to do in order to maximize the chances of success and minimize the possible downsides?
Yes, I saw your terrific podcast with Ned, who I have tremendous regard for.
Kind of.
He's incredibly knowledgeable. Um, Look, if you're going to do something like this, it shouldn't be just now that the U.S. State Department is putting together charter flights or ships that can help Americans who want to depart. That should have happened days ago. As we're doing this podcast, I think we're in day 6 of this conflict. This should have happened a long time ago. You would have moved a lot of U.S. assets all over the world, quite frankly, to make sure that our military personnel, 40,000 of which are in the region, are protected, that there are ways for other bases in the region to be protected, because we're, of course, talking about our troops in Iraq and Bahrain and Qatar and other places. But we are also talking more broadly about American citizens worldwide, and particularly in this region. So there would have to be an enormous amount of preparation. That has not occurred. Assets are just being put in place. Routes for Americans to leave are just being put in place. Dual Iranian American citizens in Iran have no way out at the moment. We don't have an embassy there, of course. Look, the most positive thing that's happening at the moment is that the foreign minister of Iran is meeting with the foreign ministers of European countries today as we're doing this podcast. And I hope that's the beginning of a diplomatic off-ramp. That's my own personal hope for this process, but a very difficult one.
I would also add that I know of no president who would launch a war like this without consultation and at least some buy-in from Congress. The old expression, if they're not there with you on the takeoff, they won't be there with the landing. So
That's
if he
that's
has,
that's really, really important. And as someone who used to work with Congress, big mistake on my part not to mention that. Not only should there be consultation, there should be uh, secure briefings. There's no doubt that any decision at least has to be shared up front with what's called the Gang of Eight, the leadership and the chairs and rankings of key committees. None of that has occurred. I know the Democrats have asked for such a briefing. They've laid out a bunch of questions. There are resolutions that have been put forward in both the House and the Senate to invoke the War Powers Act. So lots of action up on Capitol Hill, none of which it appears at the moment the administration supports.
this question for you. We do have a situation now where Iran is under incredible pressure. They have had devastation. Now seems an almost ideal point to have negotiations because this pressure has been applied and it has been unrelenting. How would you, if you were sitting there and had your allies who were about to meet with the foreign minister, turn this military situation into a diplomatic solution?
Well, I think that probably Foreign Minister Rachi meeting with the foreign ministers of uh, Great Britain, France, and Germany is a good step because it would be harder for them to begin publicly with the Americans, since we are in the midst of, President Trump is in the midst of making this really cataclysmic decision. Um, and I would hope that the Europeans who actually were negotiating with Iran before the US ever got involved really can begin to create an outline that then the Americans can become part of. The really difficult moment here will be if this develops into a diplomatic off-ramp, whether Prime Minister Netanyahu will support it. And everything that he's doing right now appears to show that he wants this really to not end at this moment, but really wants to entice the US into bombing Fordo, or as he has suggested, looking at human commandos to somehow take on Fordo. Israel's very good at doing covert things, very good at doing things that we usually see in movies, but this is a very, very tough task, even for Israel.
Well, I cannot thank you enough. I think this has been one of the most educational conversations I have had in laying this out. I hope our viewers and readers and listeners understand the wealth of knowledge that they've now had access to. We will be following this very closely, and we look forward to having you back. Your insight is really just invaluable. So thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jen. Take care.
You too.